Hello, and welcome to Developing with CockroachDB. I am super stoked about this week because we're doing Python. Not that I'm biased. I am completely biased towards Python. And I just wanted to welcome everyone here to Developing with CockroachDB. This is a developer-focused success program with a series of workshops and office hours to help you tackle your biggest developer aspirations. We want to help you get the most out of CockroachDB utilizing what you know so well with SQL and Postgres. And if you've taken Cockroach University, which is currently down, and we're so sad, but it'll be back soon. If you've taken Cockroach University, are new to intermediate user of Cockroach Cloud, bring us into your journey. We want to help you make the most out of the platform, help us improve your experience. Today is a module called Practical Python with Alistair and John St. John. And tomorrow will be office hours, which is basically an AMA, where you can ask about today's module, but you can also ask us anything to do with Cockroach Cloud, CockroachDB, Cockroach Labs. So now I would like to introduce our experts. First up is Alistair Parry, who's an enterprise architect and has been cycling around the world. Maybe not around the world.
Not quite, no.
So what have you been doing with a bicycle lately?
Well, I cycled from London to Brighton, which is about just under 63 miles or 101 kilometers.
What?
Yeah.
What are you doing? Why?
Well, for the challenge, but also for raising money for ladies' cancer charities. That was the main purpose of the event.
Yes, that is awesome.
Check I got my medal, yeah.
Yes. What is it? London
to Brighton.
London to Brighton. Dang. I'm so impressed with that. All by itself. Like, that's it. We're done. We're good. It's good. Good chat. Good call. And then no pressure, John. What did you do this weekend that compares to cycling from London to Brighton? Maybe we should just start with...
I don't think I can shake a stick at that one.
We're done. Thank you. Thank you for joining our TED Talk. I know, seriously. That's amazing, Alistair. All right, so John, tell me what brought you to Cockroach Labs. What was your SQL journey like?
Sure, yeah. So I've been at Cockroach Labs for about 3 months now. Prior to that, I was working for a startup for quite a few years in kind of a different space in consumer privacy, working both on the engineering side and then also on working with customers for a platform that delivered a lot of privacy solutions. But really, I've had a couple decades of doing a lot of data, working with a lot of different databases, also working on the development side as well. So nice. I'm excited about this series because I've worked with a lot of developers, worked with a lot of application development, and I love CockroachDB and just see so much potential and so much growth for it. It's an incredible tool, and looking forward to just bringing it to more people.
Nice. And since you brought it up, what development language are you familiar with? Where's your stack look like?
Yeah, so I love Python. Actually, we didn't get a chance to talk about this, but I'm a longtime Python developer. I used to always attend like PyCons and love the community. So yeah, I was volunteered at a couple of PyCons, and this is going back quite a few years because more recently I've worked a little bit on mobile stack, so Swift and Kotlin, as well as JavaScript and TypeScript. I actually love programming languages, so I've done work in Ruby and
nice.
Probably a number of other languages as well. So yeah.
Nice.
A lot of fun.
Nice. And I am Rain. I am a technical evangelist here at Cockroach Labs. I also am a Python developer. But I started out as a LAMP stack developer back in the late 90s. Actually had to install Linux and Apache and get my SQL working by hand. So that's my background. But for the past 10, that's not true at all, 6 years, I've been a Python developer and working in the OpenStack worlds and not really thinking about the database at all until now. So I got to say, anytime Python is the focus of something, I'm like, ooh, I get to be smart again instead of a noob. Not that I mind being a noob, but I also like it when my own ego is a little bit stronger and less questioning. And so I'm super looking forward to today. I have two Raymonds. Hello and welcome back. No, this stream is this is the Developing with CockroachDB, which is every Wednesday at 12 o'clock Eastern time in whatever stream you're watching. And but my streams are on Friday, where I play with open source documents. And last Friday, Raymond was there. It's good to see you again. And last week, I remember you too. From Sri Krishna. It's so good to see you again. And I am super excited for you to learn with us. Please feel free to ask questions during the module. And Alistair, without further ado, let's take it away. Talk to me.
Right. Okay. So this is downloadable. You can from the usual place, our GitHub repository, developer success, and in the under the data practical Python, you can pull out particularly these two files here. What we're going to start with as an extra example. We won't probably get to that today, but I think it'll be useful in another week to talk about something else. But these two files here are the main ones you need to download. If you've got Python installed, I'm using Windows, but it doesn't matter. You can use a Mac, you can use Linux, whatever.
What version of Python are you playing with today?
Pretty recent, I think, 3.9.2, isn't it?
Nice. Just going for the latest and greatest.
Yeah, there's a few things don't work. I've tried with the aren't supported, particularly when I was trying things out with Kafka and things like that. Kafka libraries recently. That not everything's fully up to date with the latest version, but yeah, all the stuff I've tried today is going to show today is working fine.
Nice.
So you download these. I'm just running Jupyter, so you would just if you've got Python working, just run pip and install Jupyter.
Totally going to do this on the side while you're also doing this.
It's all done, so nothing to install there. So it's all just saying requirement already satisfied, and then you run just run Jupyter Notebook. It's as simple as that. Here it is running up because it's on Windows. It's just sitting here in this little command window. Obviously, I've moved from V1 to V2. You can see my history here, what I've been doing with Jupyter, and then that brings up this window. And then you basically dump your files in the same directory as you've started Jupyter in, and then you click on them, and then up comes your book now, your notebook now. I love this setup because it's particularly for Python. It's fantastic for teaching and learning. And you talked about John's journey to Cockroach there. I almost didn't have a journey to Cockroach Labs. I almost became a teacher. And teaching maths and computer science. I don't know. I just it's too exciting. Cockroach was such a draw. This is the place to be. You know, I need to be here. So I'm not teaching teenagers how to do maths. I'm here teaching people how to use languages to talk to Cockroach.
We're glad, Alistair. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's very thankful.
Just for teenagers, though.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. You didn't really get away from the teenagers.
Yeah, I'm a teenager at heart. So the nice thing is you can mix sort of HTML instructions with actual Python code. You can see the difference. Actual Python code sits in the little box here where it says in square brackets. This will be filled in with a number in a minute, and then some results maybe will appear underneath it. And then these are just called markup cells, and they just explain what's going on. So we assume at this point that you've already got your free tier Cluster sorted out. I'm not going to go through that again. And then you just need to be able to connect to it. And what I like to do is keep everything compartmentalized. So every time I do something new within my free tier, I create a new database for it. This time I'm just calling it TP 2019. I'll explain why in a minute. Create a user specifically to access that database, give it a password, and then I'm going to grant everything on that database to that user. And now that's a nice little compartment where for this little piece of work we're going to be doing, it's completely separate from everything else. This user can't go off and drop things from other databases or drop other databases or do something crazy. It's just going to be able to work within this one database here. So just trying to be nice and tidy here and keep everything separate. Here's all the bits you need to install to make all this work in terms of the libraries to install with pip.
And Raymond actually points out that you did become a maths teacher because databases are just relational algebra. All right, we're good. We're good for today.
And I think, yeah. And this, that's just a link to here. So these are the docs for building Python apps. So CycloPG2 is by far and away the most popular library. Remember that Cockroach is Postgres wire compatible. So we use Postgres style drivers for whatever language we're dealing with to talk to Cockroach. In this case, CycloPG2 is way and above the most popular, as far as I can work out, the most popular driver to talk to Postgres or anything with the Postgres wire compatible. These are the examples here within the Cockroach docs as to how you can get started.
Now, when you were going through the Jupyter notebook, did you mean to show us your terminal so that we could see you running those commands, or were you just were you just saying these are the commands to get started? Because we didn't see your console, we just saw the Jupyter notebook.
Oh, right, yeah, I've run those commands now. So I'm going to go into, I've now set myself up to go in as that particular user.
Okay.
So that's all been done. And this is just a free tier. So I'm in here, I'll do a /d, which is typical Postgres syntax that we accept. It says, right, have I got any tables? No. Right, we're starting with this empty database. Here, I'm just going to mention briefly, there are other ways to interact. These are called ORMs, object relational mappers, that allow you to interact at a much higher level. But most of those are based, if not all, are based on CycloPG2 at the lowest level. But we're just going to concentrate on the basic kind of interaction at the base level. So just let's import CycloPG2. Just a few utilities here we're going to use. PrettyPrint and the CSV library, and then this is just going to help us display a bit of HTML later. Okay, now the one, it might not have any output, but one means it's done it and it hasn't complained. Right, so let's set up the connection strings. So when you download it, you'll just have a lot of X's in here. You just need to put your address to your free tier cluster there and your particular cluster name in there, and then that will generate a couple of connection strings. That's exactly the same connection string I just used to connect to the console in this window up here. That's exactly that one. You can also use this kind of connection style where you do host, port, DB name, user, password, and your SSL node. You can use that, or you can use the URL.
So Alistair, for people that might not be familiar with Jupyter Notebook, it looks like you went into that block and then you ran the command. How did you execute that command?
Good question. I just press Shift.
What? So it runs
Control
it
Enter.
from within
Control
Jupyter?
Enter. Yes, Control Enter is what I do. I'll just.
And so that's actually executing that.
Yes,
over on the console.
That code snippet. Yeah.
So it's running it. We have an engine here. Each of these windows, you can open multiple windows, and each window has basically an engine, which is basically Python running in the background. So anything you run in one cell is still carried forward. So I did my imports there; they're carried forward. I did my setting of variables here; these will be set. It's just like being in an IDE, but it's all there, and you don't have to cut and paste it in. It's all done. You just press Control Enter to execute what's in that cell.
Which is why you're not flipping over to a console each time.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
That's awesome. So if I download this, I can, if I set up the right connection string to my free cluster, I can kind of go through the whole process against my database. Is that right, Alistair?
Yeah. I tried it in an IDE, and it's a lot of cutting and pasting. This is a much easier way of doing it. And you get
exactly. Yeah. I was like, why aren't you cutting and pasting to your terminal? Got it.
I will do some terminal stuff, but it'll be separate stuff, right, from what we're doing in here, right? And so you could then start to define. This is what I started doing when I first used this: is define some basic functions that do things like connect. So this one's just going to do. So this is the basic connection. I'm just going to take a string. We're going to pass that string in that we set up there in a minute, the URL, and pass that to CockroachDB.connect. That will return a connection. I can then create a cursor using the cursor on that connection, and then I can execute things. Now, this is good practice. Now, when you first log in, this is why I built it into this routine, into the pgconnect routine, is to set your application name. It makes things so much easier when you've got multiple things connecting through to your cluster. You know what they are, and they identify themselves clearly. So you can go to the developer or a person and say, what's that? Why are you connecting to my cluster? And then, being nice and tidy, we close the cursor when we've finished executing that statement. And then in this case, we're just going to return the connection so that we can use it later. And all of these other routines do other things. That their first parameter is they accept the connection. They create a cursor, do something, and they may or may not, in this case, they return results. Fetch one is just going to use the basic fetch one on the cursor, which is just going to fetch a single row back. And the fetch all. These are just very simple sort of routines where you can just sort of bundle it up. I think I use mostly primitives later on so that we don't get confused. And then this one just does pg execute. Excuse me, a bit of a scratchy throat.
Actually, no, it's perfectly okay to cough because I've been struggling with the cough lately. So let's just cough online. Damn it. We're not here to be perfect. We're here to be human.
Okay, so I'm going to call that routine the pgconnect routine here. Oh, pgconnect is not defined. I didn't click in there, did I? I didn't click in here and define my functions. I have to use them before I define them. Let's try that. That's better. Right, okay, so print out the pgcon, just see what it is. It's a connection object. You can see all that information, which is kind of split out there into component parts. This is how we use to connect. It obscures the password, and it says closed is 0, which in Python terms means false. 0 is false, yeah? So it's not closed. So we should be able to see that. If we do, I'm in here, I do show sessions, I'm connected from the terminal. You can see this is my Cockroach SQL that I'm connected in as here on this terminal, but then here's the connection that's come in from Jupyter Notebooks. And because I was nice and clearly identifying myself, you can see that the last statement run was that set application, and it's now identifying it in the application name column here that this is coming from Jupyter Notebook. So it's connected in. Right, so now let's try and do something. Right, so we talked about my cycling. I do cycling in triathlons sometimes. Now, triathlons are a 3-discipline event. The clock is running the whole time, and you have to do swimming, followed by cycling, followed by running, but you actually measure 5 times. Transition times as well, so you've got 5 things to measure. And when you've done an event, this is from an event I did in 2019, you can go to the website and you can download a CSV file, which is really cool, because then you can take that CSV file and you can load it into a database. So here's the here is the statement to create the results table. So we've got this, and these have to be exactly in the same order as they appear in the CSV file. So,
and friends who are watching, by the way, Alistair is not calling us from like Hawaii or somewhere where it's warm year round. No, he's calling us from London. It's cold a lot. So you go swimming in the cold?
I do, yeah. I go in the lake, yes.
So
Again,
when you
John,
swam, it wasn't just a heated pool that you swam in
right.
for this?
No, I swim in a lake, which the coldest I've been in, I did have a wetsuit on, was 5 degrees centigrade. I don't know if anybody can convert that to Fahrenheit, but that was cold.
Oh my God. It's like low 40s, high 30s Fahrenheit. I feel like we need hugs. Hug ops.
This is the file that I downloaded from the event website. I'll just do more on it. And you can see it's just a series of just comma-separated variables, and it's just everybody that finished. There's 258 finishers in that event, and it's got all their times for all the various things. So we need to define that. We need to know what the data is, and we need to create a table for that. We're going to use interval quite a lot here, which is a good data type, because you always say, what was your time? What was your time in the triathlon? Well, it wasn't a time really, was it? It was a start time and an end time.
Right.
What really mean is an interval, which is the difference between 2 times. That's
right.
A
how long did it take you? Oh my gosh, how long did it take you?
Well, we'll find out in a minute. I can't remember exactly. It was a long time ago. Lots happened since then. Right.
I've slept.
So we run that. I have to keep scrolling back to make sure that the number appeared. If the number appears and no errors appear, then you can pretty much assume it's worked. So we go back into the terminal here.
So that, Alistair, that CSV file, I think you might have shown this, but that's sitting on your local machine, like when you executed that.
I downloaded it at the same time as the notebook file.
Got it.
Now we do our /d. Now this is where we got confused the other day, didn't we? When we were running through it, and we said, "Hang on a minute, we didn't get any errors from the notebook. We know it's connected. We saw it from show sessions. We know it's connected in. We know it didn't give us any errors. So why can't we see the table? We're logged in as the same user. I could do select user. I'm the TP 2019 user that we defined at the start. Well, why can't I see the table? Well, it's because we worked out that it's because in the CockroachDB driver, unlike every other driver that you connect to a Postgres style database with, it doesn't have auto commit on by default. Normally, anything in the Postgres world, everything's auto commit. You type a statement, bang, it's committed, it's done.
Yeah.
But in this case, everything you can type a number of statements or run a number of statements, but you need to commit to make sure that that statement is committed. And even DDL, even data definition language, even creating tables can be transactional in this case. We need to commit it to make sure that other users can see it. So as logged in here, now if
we're saying commitment is important.
Yes, absolutely. Now we can see it. Now as another session, we can see it because it wasn't.
Commitment gives you results.
Yeah.
Way. And that's ties in exactly. I wouldn't, if I wasn't committed to my cycling, I wouldn't have been able to complete the 63 miles. Especially as during the second half, guess what happened? It rained. There was a lot of rain.
You're already swimming at 5 degrees Celsius, so
not that day.
Okay.
So we'll just describe results just to make sure we've got these columns. Just show us which the primary key is going to be the race number. That's the bib number. So that's a good primary key because no two people have got the same bib. And as you can see here, the primary key doesn't have to be the first column. It could be further down. So there we got ready to receive our data. So good. And that's all explained here. Font's too big, it's scrolled. There we go. Right, so let's load some data. Now we're going to do some real Python. Now you can get to judge my Python, which is bad.
There's no judgment here. There's no judgment here. None.
So we're going to do some basic primitives here. So we've got the connection already. We connected. We'll just create a cursor with that cursor function. Now you can also do the with actually here with the cursor. That's another way of doing it. I'm not Pythonic enough, I don't think here. I've done with opening the CSV file for reading. I'm then going to use the CSV reader function here. on the file and just read those rows out of that CSV file one by one. But I'm not going to create an insert statement for every single one of them, because that's kind of wasteful. It's a lot of round trips, especially if there's any kind of distance between you and the server. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to define a maximum number of rows as 25. I'm going to start creating an insert statement. I'm then going to go through these records as I pull them out of the CSV file, and I'm going to put the values into this insert statement, and I'm going to put up to 25 in there. And then if we get to rows max, I'm going to do a little bit of jiggery-pokery here to kind of get rid of the trailing comma and tidy things up a bit, cope with nulls. There's a club name in there. Not everybody's in a club. So some of those are just completely blank. The club name, therefore, we want to interpret that as null. So I'm just replacing anywhere where I just get single quotes as null. So the database recognizes it as null rather than empty string, things like that. I'm not going to print every single one out. I've commented that out. Then I execute the insert statement with up to the 25 set of values in from the CSV file. We're then going to do, as we said, commit it. Make sure, because if you had thousands and thousands of rows, you'd want to commit regularly. Otherwise, you'd run out of potentially the thing could fail and the whole thing will get rolled back. So
that's how you get results.
We're going to regularly commit, reset rows back to 0, reset the insert string back to start again with another insert, and then off we go. And then we drop out the bottom here at the end. There's 258 rows in the file. It should go around 25 times, what's that going to be? 8, 9, 10 times to get to 250. And then at the end, there should be 8 rows left over, which I will print this time just to show you what it looks like.
Nice. Get the last ones.
So while that was running, I didn't catch it there, but you'll see if it's running and taking some time, there'll be a star in there. And then it replaces with a number once it completes. Yep. And this is just showing you the last one, which is the last 8 rows, the final 8 rows here. So I'm doing a multi-row insert statement, insert into the table name and the values. Again, in this case, I'm not specifying the columns, so I have to have everything in order. If I wanted it to specify in a different order, I'd have to specify the columns, or a subset of columns. I'd have to specify that. In this case, I'm just specifying everything in order. There's the nulls. They've appeared for the people that don't have a club. And about half of the people are not in a club.
Of course.
And there we go. So that we could just check that now, that we can see it from another session. So select count star from results. 258. That's good. That's right. And then I could just say select just like star from results. Just do a limit. The first 5, which is just as they come out of the table, which might not be the same order as comes out of the file. Doesn't matter. Okay. So.
Team Kennett. I love it.
Team Kennett. Yeah. Right, so now we've got some data into the table. Now let's select some out. So we're going to use my fetch one routine, which just basically ran that and pulled the results back. And let's see who this is. Bib number 473. Who is this? Oh, it's me. Now, this comes back. You can see here I've got all my times in seconds. This is what the interval data type gets converted to when Python gets it out, basically. And it comes out as a Python construct called a date time delta.
Right.
We call it an interval, they call it a time delta, and it displays in this not terribly nice way of seconds equals. It's and you can see there the you see my age group. I'm not 21 as previously specified. You know, on the on an earlier stream, I'm not actually 21.
You tricked us,
22 at least.
I am a member of I don't go very often, but I am a member of a club. And then all these individual times there. That's pretty good, I thought. 73 seconds to get your wetsuit off, get your helmet on, get on your bike, and get out.
That looks pretty tight.
Yeah, no wasted time there.
That is amazing.
So let's have a look at the top 10. Let's see. I'll never get anywhere. I never podium, so I'm never going to get anywhere near the top 10. This is like just dreaming for me. All right, so there's the top guy, was just over an hour. This was actually, it wasn't 1,500 meter swim, it's 750 meter swim, 20 kilometers, about 13 miles on the bike, and then a 5K or 3 miler to finish. So that's pretty impressive. But,
I could do a 5K.
Excellent. I love 5K.
Like an hour.
Now I'm going to execute something slightly different. I'm going to cheat now. I'm going to move myself to position 1, and I'm going to move Sam back to my position, which was 124. Let's just see what happens here. Right, so we run that. Oh, right, that's
not a good example. This is not a good example for your students.
It's terrible.
And you can see here, I put multiple statements.
Real reason. It's a real reason why you didn't become a teacher.
It's an integrity issue, isn't it? Yes, I know. Just make sure that if you put multiple statements in a string that you execute, they will all get executed together, but you need to make sure you put a semicolon afterwards. That's optional. The last one is optional, but if you've got more than one statement, make sure that they have a semicolon separating them. Otherwise, you'll get syntax error.
Right.
But that's pretty standard SQL. Now I can go back, and the nice thing about Jupyter Notebooks is I can just go back to that cell and rerun it now. Oh, yes, number 1. Number 1.
I'm fascinated by number 7, David Mantle, who is so fast he can't capitalize his name.
Yeah, well, that happens when you register.
I'm gonna stop capitalizing things.Maybe that'll help with my 5K.
No.
I think the new instead of commitment gets results, I think we're seeing that cheating gets results.
It's Today is our last day of streaming.
So
I don't know why they were pulled offline.
I could take that query and run it in here. I'm in a different session now, obviously, because I'm logged in on the CLI. Now, let's have a look. Oh, now, I think the problem there is that it's blocking because, oh no, it's coming back. Right, now that's seeing the original. Sam is still number 1.
I think it's because you didn't have a commit at the end of the update.
Yes, that is
you
correct.
You didn't commit to your
didn't commit, therefore nobody else can see what I've done. And this could be a problem, because if you do things in Python and then you make changes to the database, you select data, and then you go away and have a cup of coffee, then potentially you could be locking something up. You could be causing all sorts of problems. So you need to either commit, or as in this case, I'm going to have a sudden pang of honesty hit me. Really, I really can't do this to Sam. He's worked hard. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll back. Instead of commit, I'm going to roll this back. All right?
Nice.
And then I can go back and rerun that cell. Now, the reason I saw myself here was because I did a select. I'm still in the same session. I'm in the same session here in this notebook that I did the cheating update. That's why I saw myself, and I was so happy that I'd seen myself at the top. I went away and thought my work was done. But actually, nobody else could see it because I hadn't committed. And now I've rolled back, and now I can rerun the cell again, and normality is restored. Right. We rolled back. The changes were undone.
Sam, welcome back, Sam. Congratulations. You're not 124th.
No. So that is because in this driver, auto commit is false. So PG, this is our connection. Looking at the auto commit property for this session, it's false. It will not automatically commit for you, which most other drivers that connect to a Postgres style database or most other tools that will connect to it will auto commit. So when you type, and including the Cockroach SQL shell here. So if I do something in here, if I make an update now, I won't get a chance to roll it back. It will be it'll be immediately executed in the database. Everybody can see it, and I can't undo it.
So when you're working through Jupyter, you have to make sure to do the commit. But if you're working directly in the database, is when you don't. Oof, scary.
So auto commit is, we could set auto commit to true if we want.
Yeah.
So that's just by doing there, and then we could run the thing, and then we just, and then oh no, we can't. Oh, what's happened now? Set cannot be used inside a transaction. We need to make sure. Even a select is a transaction, right? Even a select, even when I went back and reran the select, that started a new transaction under the covers within the PsychoPG2 driver. So you don't even have to make a modification. You don't even have to update any data to have started a transaction. And the problem was that I could not, in this case, it's saying I could not set auto commit to true when I was in a transaction, because that set under the covers, it's running that set session command, and it can't be used within a transaction. So if any time you have done a select or whatever, make sure just run rollback. That's fine. It doesn't do any harm. Takes you out of a transaction. Then you can run things that can be run outside of a transaction. Now, if I run that, that would have done it now. I wouldn't have had a chance to. I can't roll that back now. So if I now roll back and then go and run that query again, this is annoying. Because you can't go back, because it's individual lines. I can't go back. So I would go and just pull that query again and just run it outside in another section. So I ran it in here, and then I tried to roll it back, but it put me back to it's done the cheating thing now, because I turned auto commit on. So just be wary of whether auto commit is on or auto commit is off. By default, it looks like it's definitely off, false to start with, but you could turn it on to true if you want, but just be careful. And also be careful either way. So be careful if auto commit is on, things will be auto committed, you can't undo them. And you can't have ACID transactions with multiple statements and things like that, all these sort of good things. And if auto commit is off, be wary that you might be leaving things locked and floating around in the database, and might be annoying everybody else. So you've just got to get used to how it behaves, because it's not always intuitive.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Now, you also have a second lab, which we don't have time to get to today, right? The bank app.
Oh, yes, the bank one will look into that. So we'll look into errors and transactions and things like that. Yeah, that's much further detail on that.
Cool.
In here, we're just going to do a few more complex queries now. So anything you can cook up and write in SQL, you can put into the string and just execute it. And then I'm just using my pgfetch tool. I'm just going to look at the first three, just using a slice here. It just returns a list. Is that the right phrase? A list in Python that we iterate through?
Yeah, it can be a list or a dictionary, or
it's a list. Yeah. So that's doing that. Now that's not very readable. So what I do sometimes is I write HTML using dynamically write HTML and then display it. So I could just loop through that same data that came back here and just write it in a nice table in HTML.
Have it displayed. Yeah,
nice.
nice.
I could do that, but really, am I wasting my time really? Because there's lots of tools to help you do this. So some cool libraries to help us. We're going to use SQL Alchemy. We mentioned it earlier. It's one of these sort of ORMs that sits on top of PsychoPG2. You can use this for high-level constructs, talking to database objects as objects within or database rows as objects within the code. But it also used under the covers for loading data into pandas data frame. Now, Panda, this is a whole subject. We could spend another session on talking about data science in Python and pandas and pulling data in and out of databases. But we're just going to touch skim over it briefly. We're going to use SQL Alchemy just as an engine to import some data into pandas. And you can think of pandas as a spreadsheet in memory.
I love pandas.
Yeah, What, the animals or the library?
The library. I mean, obviously pandas are freaking hilarious and awesome, the animal. But yeah, pandas Python. I'm totally gonna put that link up.
And this
Huge
one,
fan.
so what we're going to do here is we're going to change our URL slightly. It starts with PostgreSQL at the moment, but we're going to replace it with CockroachDB. And the reason for that is that SQL Alchemy has a specific dialect, and we loaded that up. It was in the list of things to install with pip earlier, was the SQL Alchemy cockroach dialect. So it's one of the pieces of work that we've done to make developers' lives easier working with CockroachDB and Python, is to produce these dialects. So by changing our URL, we're going to replace PostgreSQL with CockroachDB. It'll tell SQL Alchemy you're now talking to Cockroach, and it can work really, really well. So we do that, and it just creates an engine which Pandas is going to use to load into memory, load some stuff into memory. So this time I'm going to just select everything from results and just ordered by position. Because remember that in a relational database, things can come out in a random order if you do select star form. If you don't put the order by there, you can't guarantee the order. So if you want them in a particular order, use the order by. So the nice thing, I'm running a couple of things here. So info will tell us some information about the data that we've just selected, and then the head is just going to show us the first 5 rows that come back. So we can see it's the pandas data frame, and then this is basically the table, the columns in the table that we've had. And again, it has its own kind of data type that it calls it, time delta 64 in this case. Is that nanoseconds it's got it in? Oh, it's going to be
Yeah.
It that might put it.
It's wishful thinking.
And then this is the output from the head, which is just showing the first 5 rows of it. But you can see it prints it out beautifully. Yeah. So it says, I don't know about the 0 days, but it prints out the time, the intervals nicely, and just formats the data nicely. And I did all that with minimal lines of code. I didn't need to write all that complex Python to write HTML out. So use the libraries, it's brilliant. So they've done all the hard work.
Yeah, it's an incredible analysis tool, and it's open source.
And then, so let's run that. Oh, I've gone wrong here. What have I done wrong here? Oh, SSL connection has been closed unexpectedly. Huh.
Oh, come back. Where's your cloud? Is your cloud in EMEA or is it in North America?
It's close. It's in London, I think.
Yeah.
And I'm in London. So I'm not quite sure what happened there, because it's showing the session is still connected.
It is. No, maybe Jupyter?
No, this is my Jupyter notebook. This is not the... Let's have a look.
Maybe it's just an idle timeout.
Maybe
something on this Alchemy.
Let's try connecting again with the engine. Well, it says it's okay. Yeah. It worked before, didn't it? Yeah, it might have been an idle timeout. Let's try that again here. Better. And actually, we should see this. So if I show sessions again, this is actually a completely separate session. This is not a Psycho PG2 connection. This is an engine from that. And you can see, look, we talked about when you've done something, even if it's a select, do a rollback. This is the last thing that this ran. It did a rollback because it was being tidy. It was saying, right, I've done a select, I've selected you the data and put it in the pandas data frame, but I'm now going to run a rollback because I don't want to hold any resources or anything, hang anything over. So it's actually doing a good job there. It's doing things right because it knows that under the covers, it's using the PsychoPG2 driver and it needs to be tidy. It needs to either commit or roll back to make sure it doesn't leave anything hanging around. So that's interesting that that's done that. And then it pulls back there. So that this was just shown by category, how many people there were and what the sort of minimum maximum times were. It's presented it nicely. And then I know we're getting towards the end of the time, so I'll just show that you could visualize things using matplotlib. This is one of the great things about, if it wasn't good enough about Jupyter Notebooks, is the fact you can display pretty pictures and things. So I'm going to pull back just the finishing times in order so that I can plot them on a graph, just to show that I can pull things out of a database into a pandas data frame, and then I can make a graph out of them. But this is a whole subject.
Nice.
And say, right, okay, there was somebody who finished pretty quickly, just over the hour. Oh, that's me. Not me. Not in my dreams, me. Finishing just under the hour. And then the kind of like the main body of people finishing there, and then the tail here, so you can visualize the data, and you can put a title on it, things like that. And then just to show being tidy, so we can close down the connection. There's the SQL, the cycle.
Now we want to close the connection, Jupyter.
Now it will say
before.
Closed one now, so that's true. Has been closed. I show the sessions. Yeah, and now I've just got this, the SQL Alchemy connection. So we can do that by doing engine dispose. Be nice and tidy, and then that's gone, and then it's just me connected now with Cockroach SQL. So that's the end of that lab.
Nice.
I think it's going to be a whistle-stop tour of doing things with Python and getting data in and out of CockroachDB.
That's awesome. And this is all available in the developer success GitHub. It is Apache licensed, Apache 2.0, and it's available. When you go into the lab, it'll show you how to download Jupyter and get the notebook running. And Alistair has awesomely included the CSV, so you can actually play with his times and make him first, or you first, or anyone else first, make me first. But yeah, that's awesome. What do you feel like is, we've learned about pandas today, we've learned about Jupyter, we've learned about, we've dived into Python. If you were not familiar with Python before, you might be now. What do you feel like your key top takeaways are from today, Practical Python? Well,
the top takeaway is that you just remember about the commit and the rollback. So it's nice and simple. You can use your URLs that you use to connect with Cockroach SQL. That's nice and easy. Just be cognizant of what's happening under the covers and what you might be, what SQL has been run, and that you need to be making sure that you have auto commit on or off. But either way, you need to understand what's going on.
Yeah, keep it right here, whether or not it's on or off. John, what's your favorite point from today?
Well, I've got to ask Alistair, what's next?
Yes.
In the triathlon world.
Oh my goodness, that too. Yeah, I was totally thinking, that's a great question.
New results.
I don't know yet. I haven't thought what I'm going to do next.
Nothing on the calendar?
Nothing yet, no.
No midwinter.
I'm a member of the Thames Valley Triathletes. I'm going to go out probably on a Sunday morning and do 2 or 3 hours ride with other people. I don't do that very often, so I'm going to start doing that.
I will be asleep on Sunday morning. I'm completely in awe of triathlon. Like, I just started running 10 years ago. And the reason I had just started is I have a heart that is very rare congenital condition, runs in the family, where basically your heart goes at a normal rate, and then depending on how old you are and your fitness level, it'll drop to about half beats per minute. And so that can mean that you just pass out, or it can mean that you die. But it basically means that if I'm working out heavy cardio, that all of a sudden my heart rate will drop to resting heart rate, which is bad. for when you're working out and you need all that extra oxygen. And so I started working with this personal trainer 10 years ago. And I was like, I can't run, I can't do cardio. And they were like, well, let's just do the like snail's pace, like barely come off the ground. Let's just play with your heart. And I was like, yes, because I'm sick of like watching my friends do obstacle courses, frankly, is the part that I get excited about. Like when you're doing obstacle courses, that's yes. And I feel like triathlon is a very boring obstacle course.
I imagine maybe sometimes there's obstacles, unexpected obstacles.
Oh, yeah.
Triathlon.
Oh, yes. Other people.
Yeah.
Your wetsuit is an escape room all by itself. But yeah, she got me running so that I can do obstacle courses. I can do 5Ks. I run them. I run real slow. I'll make you feel really good. Maybe I'll get to a triathlon stage and then you won't be last because I'll be last. And you can even go, well, compared to that person, I'm number one. No, running. Well, no, I thought John was setting you up to talk about the next lab very eloquently.
I thought about that.
But I also like this.
Yeah. I mean, I love the way you put this together, Alistair, just for a few comments on that. I think hopefully the folks on the live stream get a chance to play around with the Jupyter Notebook because it is such a great way to learn and to be able to, provide sort of a manual. It's not a markdown file. It's not just a web page. It's really interactive, and you can go in there and change the actual code and run your own things. And like you did on the fly, Alistair, you added the rollback, for example. Like you can just do that in your own copy of that Jupyter Notebook. So, and it's so simple to set up with Cockroach Cloud, which is, awesome because you can spend a few minutes, spinning up a new cluster or use an existing cluster, put in your connection string and credentials and run through everything. So definitely encourage that. And then I know you did do some other work, Alistair and Rain, you mentioned it too. There's another work notebook, Jupyter Notebook there for the bank details. And there's actually, we have a lot of Python materials in general. But I do love these notebooks. And I think tell us about the other one, Alistair.
The other one is basically just a bank storing balances, and it's showing concurrency, multiple users accessing the same data. Well, if I'm the only one accessing the data, I'm never going to have a problem, or very, very rarely. If multiple users access the same data, especially what we just talked about there, taking up resources, there's going to be conflict, and there's going to be times when parts of your transaction don't work. And you need to be able to handle that. So I'm sure most of the developers out there know that most of the code they write is nothing to do with what they're trying to do. It's error handling. And this is that's what coding's all about. It's handling errors. And we have these things called serializable errors in Cockroach. So this is just showing, this is actually the same example that comes off the docs page. This is just basically taking this example and putting it into a notebook format so that you can play with it more easily. So looking at just doing a constant loop and trying to move balances from one account to another, and then trying it from another notebook and having two going at the same time. And all of a sudden, we're going to find some problems, and we're going to have to handle those.
That's cool. So that's cool. Well, if you have any questions for us, we have 4 more minutes that we are here live, but we are also back tomorrow for database office hours. Same bat time, same bat channel. Maybe I shouldn't use that phrase. That's a very old phrase. Same channel, same time that you watched the module today. And Alistair and John will both be here tomorrow for our office hours, along with myself. Next week, what are we doing next week for our module? I think we're doing something with Node, right?
Yeah, we're doing build and deploy REST API using CockroachDB, and it'll be based on a Node.js application.
Very cool. And that's with Jesse Lynn and John St. John. And then after that, we'll have office hours with Alistair and Bram. And then the following week, the 20th of October, is JSON, isn't it? I think, John, aren't you on that one too? I haven't seen you at all on these, and now you're like 4 weeks in a row.
Yeah, Fabio and myself. So yeah, the 20th. And then the next week I'm on import, backup, and restore. So you're going to see me a lot.
Very, very important. Always have a backup, kids. I feel like that's all right there with don't do drugs. Always have a backup. So we've got we can do better. Commitment gets results. Always have a backup. Don't do drugs.
And the other great thing, I'm very impressed with John's module. I've run through it actually. It's what inspired me to produce this one. It's really import is really important, because if you've got a lot of data, all those inserts that I did are going to be quite expensive and take a long time. Import is the way to get huge amounts of data into the database. So that's a really important module.
Now the import.
I think also, go ahead. No, I was going to say, the other thing I really liked about import from the developer perspective is you might have an existing application that is already running in Postgres, MySQL, maybe another database, and you're like, I wonder how this would work in Cockroach. So I want to walk you through how to bring that over and set up your application so that you can just kind of run that against Cockroach.
Exactly.
It's not very hard, and we have a lot of really great tools for it.
And is that with Cockroach Cloud or dedicated?
Cloud.
Cloud. Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
All cloud all the time.
All cloud all the time. I love it.
It didn't work when I first started with free tier because I was a very early user, but it does now.
Nice. Nice. Yeah, well, we're coming up to the top of the hour. And there we go. There's our music. I was like, why isn't our music coming on? There it is. That's our music. Coming up to the top of the hour, it's been absolutely awesome to have John and Alistair with me today. Shout out to Raymond and Vamsik Krishna and Chandan Kumar and Alex, and always awesome to see Luke, I think it is, who this is. And everyone else who watched, and especially the people who asked questions. Remember that tomorrow is our office hours. And the whole purpose of this show is to make sure that you are successful. This is not your only way of receiving support. This is but one channel to become an excellent developer on CockroachDB. There's Cockroach University, which is down this week, but we'll be back soon. There's community Slack. We have forums. Check out the links below. Reach out in your most comfortable path. We are so happy you joined us today. Thank you. And have a good one. Bye, everybody.